Okay, layak, teh tarik. Kopi yo.
Milo Dinosaur, Milo Godzilla.
Ais kosong berapa?
Dua.
Half boiled egg please, thank you. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Light Table Talk. I'm your host Atok.
Apai.
This is Mohit.
And I'm Sean. For those of you who are still not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. And also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and our Spotify.
Yeah.
Let me tell you guys something. Today we have a really special guest. We have Mr. Jayaprakash. He is the National Geographic National Photographer of the Year in 2017. And we are really thankful of having you here. And please give him a round of applause, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome.
So, yeah. Okay, so let's start with how do you get into wildlife photography?
Okay, so, I mean, you want my story or generally you're asking how
Your
to get
story.
into it?
Your story.
So in my case, I grew up back in India, in the mountains down south, in a place called Ooty, Nilgiris.
Okay.
So growing up, I spent a considerable amount of time around my grandparents and around the villages. Those days there were no national parks. So we kind of lived along the periphery of some of the national parks today.
Okay.
So you were really exposed to the wildlife
Yes.
From young.
So
From young.
growing up, I think I saw my first tiger or leopard or elephants at a very early age. I was chasing birds, chasing monkeys. For a long time, when I was, I think, very young, I didn't know the difference between fish and tadpoles.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes, we would go to the river with my grandfather, and then I used to spend hours trying to catch tadpoles, thinking they were fish, and I would bring them home in a bottle, and then realize 2 or 3 days later, they have these little legs growing. So yeah, I mean, it's been a natural, interesting journey. I mean, I really have to thank the surroundings that I grew up in. So it was kind of a natural progression for me to be doing what I'm doing today. I didn't have to try too hard.
Okay.
Though the switch, career-wise, I made a switch was, I wouldn't say hard, but tricky. But generally, in terms of my love with nature was from a very young age. So it was kind of a natural thing for me. I didn't have to work super hard to fall in love with nature.
Okay. So can you tell us more about how do you transition from your career? Like what were you working as and how do you transition to being a wildlife photographer?
So I spent, I think about 17 and a half, 18 years on the corporate side. I started, I think, with GE, worked for organizations like Dell Computers. My last job was with an organization called Accenture. They're into consulting and software and stuff like that. And I think, though I was on the corporate side for a while, I was still like a hobbies photographer. All my vacations were like nature reserves. Literally every weekend I was out shooting birds across lakes in places like Bangalore.
Shooting as in taking pictures?
Yeah,
or?
taking pictures.
Well, we have to clarify it, right? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, so when I use the word shoot, it basically means I'm taking pictures.
Taking pictures.
So yeah, I was kind of addicted to just capturing action, capturing images, going around. Especially, I lived a large part of my corporate career I spent in Bangalore in India.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time around there, traveling to nature reserves. There was which is now called Kabini or Nagarhole Nature Reserve. It's a great place to see tigers and leopards and amazing wildlife. So all our vacations used to be like that. Sometimes my wife used to be unhappy probably because, almost all our...
All of your vacations were in nature.
Yeah, nature.
Visiting nature reserves.
I mean, thankfully she really admires what I do, and she is a nature lover herself. So it wasn't so much of an issue, but I think once in a while it's good to take a
Actually, to be
kind of a vacation.
very frank, you're asking him your transition from corporate to wildlife photographer. Actually, I'm very curious, like because you were already exposed in nature, you grew up in an area where you are already exposed to wildlife. How did the transition from being exposed to wildlife to
Yeah,
being
so-
into the corporate? I'm actually more interested in that.
Yeah, so the tricky thing is, though I was doing photography for a long time, when I say transition, I mean make it a full-time job.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
But as a kid, for you to be very exposed to the wildlife, what brought you to the city? No, was it something that maybe your parents wanted you to be, to work in the city, go to university?
I think,
rather than
yeah, I mean, not
directly
really
yourself
lah.
to
I mean,
nature?
I was an army kid. My father was with the
Okay.
government services with arms and ammunition, quality assurance with arms and ammunition. So I
It
was
was a
like,
strict upbringing.
well, to a certain extent, to a
Okay.
certain
Okay.
extent. So I took the same route as everybody else, right? I mean, finish college, find a job, and see, move on from there. That was like, a standard formula all of us followed.
Okay.
So I did my hotel management. I wanted to join the cruise lines, and, spend some time, but that didn't happen. Most of my workspaces have been accidental. One led to another. Met a friend. I started with the hotel industry, so I was actually working with some
Okay.
hotels back in Nilgiris in Tamil
Okay.
Nadu. It's a tourism town. Mostly people come there for spending their honeymoon or
Okay.
stuff like that. So from there, accidentally met a friend who said, what are you doing here? Why don't you come and join us? And I did some manpower consulting for some time. So basically, we were hiring people on behalf of other organizations
Okay.
and supplying, human capital. And then one day I met the HR guy from the company who we were supplying people to, and he's like, "Dude, what are you doing there? You should be working for us directly." I said, "Why not?" So one thing led to another. Though I did my hotel management, I ended up in the ITS industry. We were very early beginners in the BPO industry, you could say.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've been on the phones taking calls for like Disney, Disney Cruise, Walmart, Gap, Old Navy. These are all,
This was back in the day, right? Like
yeah,
around the 90s and
yeah,
90s
I mean
and
2000s, yeah.
So
Early
it was like
2000s.
the internet was just starting to boom and
Absolutely, absolutely.
so actually I took a few like back in the day I used to take a few hotel jobs as well and I'm very thankful I'm not in that industry. I mean dealing with like people in the tourism industry and just catering to them is something I realized no I'm not meant for this. Just I can't say hello welcome everything. I'm like please your room go there.
But for me in my career, I think that played a big role also because we were early beginners in the industry when a lot of outsourcing started moving into India.
Okay.
So it also helped us grow very fast in the process.
Okay.
Because outsourcing was growing at such a rapid pace. We grew from one level to another, to like a team leader, to a manager. We moved up the value chain relatively faster.
Actually, I'm very interested to know because my dad is Indian as well, and I always ask him how was life back then in India? How was things like nowadays? It's a cosmopolitan city like everywhere else. A lot of parts in India already, many cities are already very industrialized and everything. But back then, how was it? Was there like the traffic you see nowadays? Like how was it? How were things back then? Were people very
Well, not
conservative?
as I mean, yeah. I mean, specifically with respect to traffic, probably not as bad as it is today, because I think the industry grew, the economy grew, things like cars and bikes and all of this stuff became more and more affordable.
Okay.
So I think that's when it was everybody's dream to own a car, everybody's dream to own a house, and it just went at a crazy pace. Also, I think some of our large cities were not meant to grow at the rate they grew in India. So a lot of development happened sporadically, unplanned development with less foresight and stuff like that. So even now, I think in some cities, traffic congestion is
Horrible.
Very bad, yeah, very bad.
it's quite tough.
Because sorry
yeah.
to cut you there.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Because due to our generation gap, because in our time, I mean it's really nice to like feel what you have been doing around your age. I think it's good for people nowadays to explore the wild, to be more into the nature kind of thing. But During our time, what were we doing? We were playing Tamiaka, Blade, being bullied. Yeah, being bullied. Wow,
Not me.
you don't escape. But I also like the nature. As I play in the playground, I see butterflies flying. Like, I see butterflies every now and then, but I only see one kind.
Yeah.
I don't see many.
Yeah.
So I think it's really great to have, like, I feel like I want to experience your time. It's
Yeah.
like I would like to appreciate that. Like for
that's
people nowadays, they are more into their electronic devices, social media. They don't go out often. So please give us your perspective.
Yeah, so
on this.
that's the intention, lah. I mean, if you see specific to Singapore, if you, especially during COVID, we started doing a lot of videos. In fact, a lot of my work was overseas. Most of the production work I do, or photography work I do, was always overseas. So I think when COVID happened, I had just returned from Japan after a project with the Japan Tourism Board, and all of a sudden, all my projects were on hold. I wasn't sure. I'm like, what do I do now? What do I do next? And then for 2 years, I had all the time in the world. And I realized, though I was in Singapore for a few years, I had not explored Singapore myself. It was more like a base. I was just going out, coming back, going out, coming back. So I said, maybe this is the right opportunity for me to, really explore my own backyard or Singapore. So that's when a lot of our videos,
Singapore-based videos.
Singapore-based videos, we started putting time. So I started frequently visiting, and thankfully, I think Singapore was, through COVID, I think we were in one of the safest countries in the world.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
The government did an amazing job, in the way, because I can feel it as an outsider, right? When you've lived outside in so many countries, and then when you come to Singapore, you can actually feel
The efforts
difference.
that
feel
the
efforts
government
and
did.
difference. So I could still go back to the parks every day and shoot. So that's how we started producing, and then I started thinking, I either have the choice of, like everybody else, going and taking some photos and just putting them over on Facebook and Instagram, or do something more substantial.
Something more value.
Yeah, something more valuable, right? Which can actually make a difference to my viewers. So as a photographer, as a videographer, I don't shoot just for myself. A lot of people say, I don't care what people say, and stuff like that. But for me, I'm shooting for an audience because I'm doing it with some purpose in my mind. I'm not just doing it because it's fun.
It's fun or hobby, yeah.
So for me, my audience matters. So it was important for me to put out content there which I thought would make a difference to my audience. That's basically, people in Singapore. Yeah, I'm sorry.
When you like, you said you have an audience and you have a purpose in your mind. Is there also does every photograph you take has a message behind it?
I try. So I also teach storytelling at NUS, and I do a lot of sessions where I do some sessions specifically around storytelling. How do you tell stories with photographs especially, right? With video, it's a lot easier because you have an opening, you have the climax, and finally the hero gets the heroine. So it's easy to tell the story, right? But with photographs, it's harder because you're talking about one frame. We'll probably talk about it another day.
But you know what they say? A picture tells 1,000 words.
True. I call it setting the stage.
Setting the stage.
Setting the stage. The reason I say setting the stage is, it's like a open-ended question or a closed-ended question, right? A closed-ended question would be, what's your name? There's only one answer to it. Open-ended question would be, what's your take on palm oil, for example?
Okay.
Right? So if I ask 10 different people,
it depends. Nowadays, if you ask someone, what is your gender? What is the answer to it? What is the answer to it?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I think probably things have changed.
Yeah. What is your gender,
over the
Sean?
years.
He's confused.
Yeah.
I don't know why I had to think.
He's confused.
you were saying?
No, I'm saying, so basically all of us have our viewpoints, right? About a certain issue or a policy or whatever it is in life, right? Where are those viewpoints coming from? It's basically all the influences in your life right? The people you met, what you read, who you speak to, your circle of friends, right?
Yeah.
You are not just making them up from nowhere, right? It's not a machine, right? You click and your answer's coming out, right? Those are it's your
From
thought
your life
process,
experience.
Your subconscious.
Yeah, the same thing with storytelling with pictures, right?
Okay.
So you compose a picture in a manner where you give the viewer the opportunity. You give him certain direction, but you can't tell the whole story. You give him certain direction, but give him the opportunity to create that story when they view your pictures. But it's easier said than done. Yeah, there's no secret formula for it. Different people would do differently. Like I use things like my subject's eyes to tell a story, or just the behavior. So that's why with wildlife photography, I always tell it is it's 90% your awareness of wildlife and your understanding of animal behavior, when they come, where they when they go, where they come, how do they behave in different scenarios. So it's 90% that. It's only 10% photography. Photography is the easy part.
Okay.
Can you
Understand.
can you describe to us one of your most influential picture, which you think that describes a lot of emotions in it? Do you have any?
Wow, hard lah. So many.
Would it be the National Geographic one? Do you
Yeah, I
think
mean, a
that
lot
would
of
be-
National Geographic images. For
But I
example,
mean, that's their perspective. National Geographic choose. That's their. But what about you? What is a picture that reflects what
They
Sean?
really hit the audience.
yeah.
What you
So
feel?
yeah. So I mean, it like for example, right? It's very hard to pick images like that, and the reason I say that is because, for example, if you go online and Google um, pictures that have been probably sold for the most amount of money, right?
Yeah, there are plenty. I mean,
You will see a picture, and you'll be surprised. For a common man, when he looks at some of those pictures, you will think,
it's just a plain picture.
yeah, I mean, why would somebody
why would someone pay so
why
much
would
for
somebody
it?
pay $1 million to buy something like this, right? So I think the whole concept of this art and photography and all this, there's a lot of ambiguity over there. You have a variety of audience. So there could be a certain audience which may love my pictures. There could be a certain audience which does not necessarily think my images are amazing or great. So, but in the industry, there are some general rules, some general consensus, right? I mean, why do we go to people who've had the experience and ask them for some guidance, right? Because their exposure is a lot more. So people like National Geographic or BBC, because of that varied experience and exposure, to a certain extent, you can say, these are the standards in
These are
terms
the
of
standards,
photography right now. But personally, I always tell my students, there's no good or bad photograph. It's just a photograph. Every photograph has a different audience.
Wait. I'm learning something new. You just said students. So do you have like a school of?
Not necessarily. I mean, students. I mean, I do a lot of sessions. There are a lot of people who approach me. I sometimes just take them out. I teach, including kids. I have parents who reach out to me who want me to spend some time with their kids who are interested in photography. Sometimes I just take them out to the parks and expose them and show what.
Do you have
just share-
a age range?
I'm sorry.
Age range
Not really.
for the children?
In fact, a few weeks ago, I was actually sharing one of the what do you call your kindergarten schools or play schools? Yeah. So I was actually sharing with 4-year-olds.
Okay.
and they understood what were you.
But it's
trying to-
interesting. I think this is what is changing. I think with what's happening around the world, it's nice to see schools where kids are as young as 4 years are interested in bringing people like me to the school to actually share some of these things with kids that early, which actually could make a big good difference
Yeah,
to the
good difference.
the kids. I was showing them pictures of tigers, sharing stories about tigers, because generally people have this mindset that wild animals are dangerous, or the tiger will kill you, or the lion might eat you, right? That's what kids generally know,
correct.
which is not necessarily true. We all know it's not
I think
true.
adults also.
Yeah.
Some adults also think that.
Yeah. So it's nice. It's nice to share with all these ages, especially in Pasir Ris. I've done a lot of talks in many schools.
Okay.
Where I go, sometimes talks are specific to Pasir Ris, to kind of share with the kids, what's there in their own backyard.
Okay.
I show them videos.
Like, there must be someone who continues your legacy. Wouldn't I think everyone would like that? Someone that
Well, I don't think I'm at that level where
But
we
don't
can talk
underestimate
about,
yourself. You won there's a huge award being part of the National Geography.
Well, yeah, I
They
mean,
award you the
it's,
National
probably
Photography of the
probably a
Year.
legacy in my family. I mean, probably the only one to. I understand where you're coming from. For a photographer like me, a National Geographic Award, a BBC, is equivalent to an Oscar, because
Yes,
there's
like-
nothing beyond that in terms of how it's looked at.
Because when you mention yourself like that, I'm thinking, what have we done? What have we accomplished?
The only thing we have accomplished is basically nothing. So far.
If we put it in that perspective.
Not really true, I mean, I think in the beginning when I came here, we were just chatting. I mean, just what you guys doing here itself is an amazing initiative, and we need more and more people like you guys to do such things, because all of us have a sphere of influence, right?
Correct.
Imagine if more and more people like you can make the difference in people's lives.
We really do hope.
Yeah, we really do hope that's the
that
case.
we can make a difference. I mean, all of us here, we can agree that we would rather our kids to be more out in the nature, spending more time outside with the animals, the wildlife, than playing with handphones every day at a very young age and spoiling their eyesight, not looking.
Not learning.
Not learning
Yeah,
anything.
basically-
Basic
I
knowledge.
can completely understand. I have a 5-year-old at home.
Okay.
Basically, they learn. They can learn on their social media. They do learn some stuff, but we all know that nothing on the internet nowadays is 100% true.
Yeah.
True, yeah. I mean, I have the same challenge. It's hard to keep my son away from the iPad or a TV. We try, we try and limit his
The use
viewing
of-
time,
yeah.
and so the more you can expose our kids to outdoor stuff, I think the better it is for their long-term benefits.
So you also mentioning that like before we spoke about various issues, you were saying that each photography you want to have a message over there. So is it something like method actors? Like method actors, they put themselves in a, let's say they wanna talk about they wanna act in a scene, so they put themselves in the mindset that okay, they are that person. So when you take a photography, do you immerse yourself with nature, for example, to capture that photography you're looking at? In a sense, for example,
You have to, and it's not something you can.
like not
It's not
many
so-
people can do it. It's like
I think you can, you just have to give it more time.
Patience.
The more.
So how do you do it?
Well, I think in my early days when I started, I was everybody else, right? I had this, I call it the FOMO, or fear of missing, or whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, the minute I see a bird, it's like, cut. I'm like just firing away like a machine gun, right? But I think that's natural, right? I mean, from there, eventually, as you mature as a photographer, you grow out of it. You're not worried about any story, or you're not worried about composition. It doesn't matter, right? It's like you just shoot. But I think I was shooting exactly like that. But I think it reached a point where I started thinking, why am I doing this? I'm spending hours and hours and tons of money traveling, shooting. Why, right? After a point, you start asking these questions. Is it worth it? I think when I started thinking on those lines is when probably there was this mind shift that happened in myself. So I said, you know what? My photograph needs to do something for an audience. My photographs need to bring some difference, make a change or influence people to do something differently. So I said, if my photographs are not doing that, then I just felt like, there's no more motivation for me to do it every day. What's in it for me, right? I mean, there has to be some outcome from what I'm doing other than just making myself happy.
Yeah, correct.
And after a point, you can make yourself happy for a while, and after that, you kind of burn out, right? Yeah.
Because I know, in being a photographer, it's not easy job. I know, because you need a lot of patience. True or not?
Absolutely, yeah,
You need a lot of
absolutely, yeah.
patience.
Especially with nature and wildlife, it's even more harder because nothing in your control. Light not in your control, subject not in your control. For example, there are times when I've gone and spent like weeks and come back with 0 photographs.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean you cannot tell a tiger that, oh, you have to come, right?
I think if it was me, I think if I have to, when I see a tiger there, because I'm the kind of guy that I don't have patience, so I think I will fidget a lot, and I'll make a lot of sounds, and then I'll tend to fart a lot. So do you think it will scare away the animal?
Maybe not lah.
I don't think you should be that near a tiger. I don't think you should be that near, so
Absolutely,
for him to acknowledge your presence. So
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of understanding helps. For example, we travel with nature guides, we travel with people who are locals who understand the landscape well. So generally, the probabilities are slightly higher when you go with the right people. You understand the habitat. So your chances are higher because you have at least a certain understanding.
is
Of
there any like before you go to any landscape or nature? Is there any prep talk you have with your team that okay, we are gonna go here and we are gonna grab this picture? Is there something like you do to
we
motivate
do.
yourself?
I mean, of course, we do. So when I started, I was shooting what I saw. But then slowly, when I started becoming more of a storyteller, I think it was about. In my mind, I constantly have ideas. I visualize stuff constantly.
okay.
Okay.
So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I want an image like this because I think an image like this will be powerful enough to send a message or something like that. So then I spend time figuring out how I can bring my idea to life. So that's a longer process.
I think I have very poor imagination. So I do imagine stuff at times. Please, I do imagine stuff at times. But let's say I want this nice background. I'm standing there. I can imagine it in the night, like night shot, like so beautiful. But if you ever came across when you end up there, it's nothing like that.
Sometimes yes, like I said, because weather conditions might change. For example, the light could be really bad on that day. Cloudy day, there's no light. Because if there is no light, there's no photography, right? The very Greek definition of photography is painting with light.
Okay.
Bring your own light or anything, or just the
No,
camera.
I'm not a big
Natural?
fan of artificial light.
Okay.
I prefer shooting in natural light.
Okay.
I think the minute I said that, he's looking at
Yeah,
the
we
light.
should we turn off?
But it's a different setting.
But there's a difference. I'm specifically talking about nature.
Nature, yeah.
Because I think sun is always in one direction.
Correct.
There
The
is
sun moves, there's one direction. So the light usually is, I mean, of course, there's ambient light and, the light is spreading, but usually it's in one direction. But I'm also a big believer in manipulating natural light. So I shoot a lot of my images. If you see, I shoot backlit. Because traditional photography tells you if you're shooting in a studio, if you go for
Photo shoot.
photography class, they will say light should be behind you, should fall on the subject and all that. But for me, when I think I'm constantly trying to see how I can bring new perspectives or create images that you're not used to seeing.
Okay. Understand.
So bringing something new to the table. So I'm constantly trying to see how I can break these rules. I'm experimenting with light. So I love shooting backlight. I mean, especially in the last year or so, you go and look at all my images. A lot of them are backlit, especially around passages and all that stuff. It's hard to do them, especially in Singapore. It's harder because we have very limited places, limited landscape. Sometimes I want to shoot backlit when the sun comes out. There's a small patch of sun rays that is on. So a small patch of light on the water, a small orange patch. We're only probably this big. So I'm trying to get a subject in that part of that little piece of light. So sometimes I would wait. It would take me like a week before I get something there. So it's a little more methodical, a little more planned these days.
So it's like perfect lighting lah.
Not necessarily. I mean, not necessarily perfect, but
But you have
different
a rough
perspective.
idea, right?
Yeah, rough
Okay.
idea. So that involves a lot of recce.
Yeah.
So that's one of the most common tips I tell people is don't just run all around Singapore chasing birds. I always tell people
So you-
stick to a location for a longer duration.
And
Be
wait for the bird.
consistent to one place. So you may not see something every day.
That's a very good advice.
Yeah.
Stick in a place for a longer duration, Sean. Don't go and find many different girls, stick to one.
Okay, wait. Okay, so actually, I want to know more about the National Geographic Award that you got in 2017. Can you tell us the story of every single detail of how you got that photo?
Wow.
Because it was a really, really good photo.
It looks
There
dangerous.
was an
though.
orangutan crossing a river in Borneo, right? If I'm
Correct.
not wrong.
Yeah,
So-
that's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, what was other than the story, how do you even get in the position to, I'm sure it must be
Yeah.
tough, just holding up your camera, the position and everything, and so it just the.
I think
portrait,
you get used to it, lah. I mean, the more time you spend doing it, I mean,
From
I think
experience.
another.
when I looked at the picture, it was like it's like I felt like the orangutan wants to tell me something.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
he
yeah,
wants to
yeah.
speak to you. Like
That's what
What,
I
that's-
thought of
he wants to
also.
tell you about his life. I look at his eyes and everything. It was such a perfect. It encapsulates so many things and different emotions when I saw it. Like I really felt like he wants to tell me something and I want to communicate with him. That's how I felt.
If the orangutan saw Mohit, definitely he will tell a lot of stories.
No, but
I knew you were gonna say that.
no, but I completely understand and agree with what he's saying. And the reason I say that is because I took a lot of photos that day of the orangutan crossing. But there was a reason why I specifically submitted that image for the award.
Okay.
Why?
Of what he said.
Everything that he said, right? He's my viewer, for example, today.
Okay.
That was his response from what that image meant to him, or whatever that image spoke to him indirectly.
So guys, if you wanna be a wildlife photographer, this whatever I said, even though I'm not an expert, take note of that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
because
uh,
that was the whole point, right? So there's a lot of ambiguity in this, like I said, right? A lot of it looks like gyan. You know what gyan means, right? It's like
Just-
we generally give
we
a lot
generally
of
give-
faff advice to people, right? So I don't want it to be that way. So, like I said, there's no magic formula that I can say 1 + 1 and then you'll get an amazing image. But the idea is to constantly see how you can push yourself to be more and more creative. So, specific to that image, I think I had the same feeling when I was shooting that image.
Okay.
But the reason why I also got into the river to make that image is because technically the angle in which you shoot can make a huge difference to those vibes from the photograph. So I could have shot that image top down from
Top down.
but you wouldn't have had that same effect that you just spoke about
okay.
if I had not shot it eye level
Because
at ground level.
if you shot it top down, the viewer might think that it's from a very far and you're not.
Could be. I mean, so many ways. I mean, yeah, you can interpret in many ways.
Yeah.
But just that vibe of that animal.
It's like you're next to the animal. You are speaking with him.
Yeah. So shooting eye level is another good way of capturing more interesting images. So for me, I was trying to get all of those emotions out. So it's an intimate moment, right? I mean, after a point when you start spending more time, and I'm a lone traveler. I don't travel with large groups. Usually I'm with my guides or people that I'm working with to support me. I don't travel with like a group. I occasionally do take some friends and stuff like that, but not so much. So the more time you spend, it'll automatically happen to you.
Was it
I
your
think-
first time in Borneo, or have you many times have you visited it?
Not nearly my first time. I was actually, I was fascinated by, my first introduction to a lot of primates was Singapore Zoo.
Singapore Zoo.
Singapore Zoo.
Okay. Was that why a lot of your, because I understand that a lot of your content is very focused on primates, orangutans,
To a certain extent. I love primates.
macaques as well.
I'm sorry?
A lot of macaques.
Of course, macaques. So,
Macaques or macaques?
Macaques.
Macaques. sorry. My bad.
Macaques.
yeah, you can classify all of them into
Primates.
primates, monkeys, whatever you want to call them in the local language. So I think Singapore Zoo, when I went first time to the Singapore Zoo, I was fascinated. I'm generally not a big fan of zoos. But I think Singapore Zoo is not your usual zoo. Um,
Not your usual zoo as like, in what sense?
what sense? In the sense,
The treatment of the animals.
the way the animals are taken care, just the layout of the zoo. It's a lot more comfortable for a lot of those animals and species. You know, they're not in cages all the time like you see in other zoos. It's kind of nice spread across. You see how the design is. They've used these water bodies to isolate each patch instead of having just big walls.
Yeah.
So you really don't get the feeling of you being in a zoo all the time. Sometimes, you know, you kind of
Feel like you're being
you've kind of,
wild.
to a large extent, replicated
The wildlife.
a natural environment inside the zoo space. But anyway, so I was fascinated by the primates I saw there. First time I saw red shank langur, and I think I saw the black-crested macaques and some of these species. I was like fascinated. So I think that was kind of one of the triggers for me to say, I said, after I went back home and after a few days, I was thinking, you know, what I should do next, in terms of, my storytelling. I started thinking if I can actually go and see all of these species in the wild, is it possible? For example, it took me 2 years before I found somebody who could show me red shank langurs. Because a lot of these monkeys are exotic, rare, because of deforestation and destruction of habitat and all that stuff. A lot of the population of a lot of these species have become very minuscule right now. So it's not easy to go find them. And also in Southeast Asia, other than Borneo, where there's a lot of tourism right now, a lot of these places does not have any structured wildlife tourism. So it's not like you can go online and book a tour to Vietnam to go see those monkeys. You know what I'm saying?
That's very interesting. It really feels like that's my life story on how I met the both of them.
Fuck.
It's like my friend. It's like when I went to school, I met these two monkeys. It's the same thing.
Okay, wait. So I want to know more about the picture that you took of the orangutan. So like, what's
Okay.
the story? How long were you there? How long were you waiting for that picture?
I think coming
something
back
like
to that story took me approximately 2 days.
Okay.
before
Just 2
I-
days?
just
for
2
the
days.
Mitch.
Approximately 2 days. I think third morning we saw. I was actually there trying to capture proboscis monkeys. You've seen proboscis monkeys? In the
Yeah,
zoo
yeah.
with one of the big nose. I was actually trying to capture a proboscis monkey crossing a river. Because previously I had seen a lot of proboscis monkeys. They're brilliant swimmers. I actually have footage of these monkeys diving almost, I don't know, maybe like 40, 50 feet from trees into the water like swimmers.
Oh.
Literally dive into the water like swimmers and then they cross. And I've seen monkeys with their babies on their back swimming across the waters. So I was trying to capture that.
Okay.
Because I already knew about it, I had that in my mind. I never thought I would capture an orangutan in a river or a water because orangutans hate water. They're completely arboreal. It's completely unnatural for them to do something like this. So one morning we were, and usually when I go, I live on a houseboat. We just drift along the river. We're living on a houseboat, and
Do you camp somewhere near the
we
location?
sleep on the houseboat. We
Okay.
eat there. We have it's like a double-decker boat where we have a cook downstairs. And there are some places where there are rescue centers where you can get down. But otherwise, predominantly, you're just floating on the river, and there's a lot of wildlife on both sides.
Okay.
In many of these places.
So
Aren't you
the
afraid?
water. The water had crocodiles in the water.
Of course, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Aren't you afraid of like the insects there that really
Not
like
really,
the creepy crawlies that climbs up your pants or anything? I mean, to me,
I mean that's part of it, right? I've had leeches all over my body. But that's part of. I mean,
It's part of the
There's-
experience.
That's nature.
That's nature.
Nature, bro.
I think I will quit at the very first hour. I mean, are you okay if like maybe one day you can take all of us to go for a shoot?
sure, happy to. Why not?
I will really be very interested to see the way you do things. Really, really. Because I would really love to see the nature that you bring and show
Sure.
us. Like it's very different than we watch on TV, the National Geographic or whatever lah. I mean, it'll be really cool to be with someone to really show us the.
I mean,
view of
it's
nature.
not as dramatic as it sounds.
Okay.
I'll tell you why, because it's like 80-20 la. It's 80% waiting, 20% you're actually shooting.
Okay.
Okay.
And
So sometimes people would come with me and they'd also get bored. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So it's easier said than done, la. It's not like you go there and you all of a sudden see all of these animals and stuff.
no, and the thing is also if you bring him along, he's saying in the first hour he's already going to be he's going to back out. So what's the point of you going there in the first place?
We can go to a park or something. I mean, I don't want the jungle or what lah. But if I have to, I don't mind. As long as I have company, it's okay.
Okay, wait. So, what is the longest period of time you have stayed in maybe a jungle environment to get a photo?
I don't know, maybe 10 days, 12 days.
Okay.
I think if I can remember, one of my hardest experiences was trying to photograph a monkey called token snub-nosed monkeys.
Tongas. Okay.
Okay.
How do
Somewhere
they
on the
look like?
Vietnam-China border.
Okay.
First of all, it took me, I think, more than a year to figure out how to get there, get access, and get permissions. I knew somebody from Vietnam who used to work with WWF and stuff like that. So
Okay.
they had some connections. And later on, I came to know Singapore Zoo was actually funding for conservation of some of these monkeys. I think a lot of people are not aware. I mean, like,
Is
there are
this
lo-
the monkey? Is this a monkey?
no. So this is the golden snub-nosed monkeys
So
from
this is a
China.
monkey.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm talking about the token, but they're all of the same family.
Okay.
They're all from the same family.
If we can, I think we should add this for
Yeah,
the
we
viewers
were
to
it.
see.
Yep. Okay.
So golden snub.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
you were saying something that the
Yeah,
not many people
so
know.
it was probably one of the toughest ones to see because first of all the location was so hard to get to. We trekked almost a day to go up to this mountain top, and then we realized that was only the base where we were staying. And then from there, every day we had to go up to see these
my
monkeys, and these are all kind of like limestone mountains. So
So
there
the
really no
trekking is very difficult.
yeah, there's no trails, there's no tracks. You just have to we are holding on to rocks and climbing up and figuring our way out. And then finally, I saw this monkey for maybe a few seconds, and I
Okay.
think I got like just one photo of the monkey because you're so sensitive. Even if you kind of like break a twig on the floor,
They will just
they would just disappear. I think there are just 200 or 300 of them alive in the wild.
they are endangered or
Of course, yeah.
why are they endangered? Is that because of the
Habitat
the
destruction,
environment?
yeah, habitat destruction, food. A lot of these monkeys have specific diet. So some of the trees are no longer indigenous trees are no longer exist. They've all disappeared. So it's difficult for some of these species to adapt and survive when that happens. Change in climate conditions,
Okay.
Changing
global
the-
warming. Look at the weather conditions now in the last, even in the last few years.
That's a topic which
For another day, maybe.
no, I mean we are going to have because I mean we have someone over here, Lukesh, that he's not a very how to say strong believer in climate change in a sense.
I am, but I believe that it's natural for the earth to go through cycles. Right? So maybe humans are making the cycle a bit faster, but I don't think it's something that we can stop. Of course, pollution is a different thing, right? But
So I don't think anybody is trying to stop all of these things. I think we are only trying to at least
Mitigate, slow down.
mitigate, slow down, delay, maybe delay the inevitable. Like I have kids. I have a son now. So I think the way I think now is dramatically changed because it's no longer about me now. It's about how my son's life would be with global warming and climate change and all of these things, or his kids would be, right? So it's really not about what's happening right now, but I think we can definitely make
We can definitely make a change. you know?
make a change, lah. So it's about leaving behind a better earth for the future.
Like I have I agree to a certain extent on what he says because global warming is something that I've also been actively researching and very passionate about. Like, for example, you go to McDonald's, okay, they don't serve you the straws now. They don't serve you the plastic where for your drinks, or maybe they have a modified way of it. So for me, this seems a bit exaggerated, because these same corporations are the ones that, they are funding different, they have the producing, the way they produce the things are maybe not so sustainable. Like I was hearing, like the ways the McDonald's chickens and their fries are made, it's not very, the land they take just to produce this is not so sustainable. But at the same time, so I find it very hypocritical nowadays with how of these corporations, they are trying to promote sustainability. So that's why uh you know this whole aspect of global warming has I mean the initial efforts, I mean, we talk about like maybe 10 years ago when countries setting this initiative, and there was a focus on sustainability. But I think it's reached a point where it's become very difficult to support exactly what.
Yeah, I mean it's complex, it's complicated because there's so much of information out there on the internet. For a consumer who's consuming all this information, sometimes could be very overbearing, very tiring. Sometimes you read all of the stuff, you feel like you literally can't do anything, right? Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, can't eat this, can't. I mean, literally, it's like what do I do kinds.
Like for example, there's this very famous actor, I think was Leonardo DiCaprio, or
Yeah.
who was speaking about, he had talked in the Oscars or the Emmys or whatever, what he was saying, we have to save global warming, we have to do this, we have to do this. And just after his speech, he's taking a private jet, going into a yacht and everything. What's the point? Going on a private jet, you emit the emissions you emit from that jet.
See, you have to look at it in a more holistic manner, lah. So I mean, you still have to do certain things. You cannot just overnight dramatically change everything, right?
Of course.
But if you look at him, he's probably one of the biggest funder for conservation work in the world. He gives away millions and millions of dollars every year for organizations to.
Of course, I mean, I
conservation.
understand
Yeah.
like that perspective as well, because he's funding all these conservation efforts. But isn't it also a bit hypocritical to say like you're still you're still engaging in that sort of lifestyle? What will people like me, like what will I think, or like average viewers, for example, or like average fans, like you're not following up through with your entire heart, because you're still not willing to sacrifice some of your luxuries to really live a life that fully sustainable and conservative.
That's why I said it's easier said than done. But what matters end of the day is, even if we are making those little changes, will all add up, lah. So, for example, in Singapore, we are so protected. If you're not somebody who's traveled to other third world countries, it's hard for you to understand some of these concepts.
Of course, the
Yeah.
reality
Like
of
for
it.
example, in my case, I've traveled so extensively around Southeast Asia. Also lived in India for most part of my life. Sometimes I feel a lot of you guys are so spoiled here in Singapore. You guys just
100%.
don't care or value so many things. It's a luxury to be living in Singapore, because everything is so clean, and everything is taken care, all the processes, procedures. I know a lot of my local Singaporean friends still crib about a lot of things, but I think a lot of them, it's hard for them to understand some of these concepts of global warming and climate change and stuff like that, because it's not necessarily directly impacting you right now, or you're not in a place where you feel the impact immediately. So it's hard for you to like comprehend, like what are you guys talking about, guys? Right?
I mean, you can be a climate activist, but at the same time, everybody in this generation, basically, we are like moving forward into the future. Everybody wants the fastest way of transport. Correct or not?
And,
Do you want to be swimming to your yacht?
no, of course not.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Everybody
understand
still-
what he's saying. There's a lot of greenwashing happening. When I say greenwashing, it's like, you say one thing, people are doing one thing, but they're saying different things. But I think, end of the day, the corporates can make a bigger impact.
Yeah, of course.
If all the corporates come together, because they actually have a bigger influence on issues like global warming and climate change. But that doesn't mean normal average consumers like you and I shouldn't do everything. Also, just Singapore making all the amazing changes will not help, because this has to be a global initiative,
Global initiative, yeah, of course.
right? So there's, you've heard of the recent COP22 and all those where all these countries get together to figure out future plans for
Sustainable.
yeah. So
climate
there's a lot of good work happening, but I think there's a lot more to be done. But I think end of the day, it's important that we try and understand some of these concepts, which will probably help you make the change. I have some friends, I have some influencer friends who have started simplifying this information for common man understanding, or they kind of break down these complex
Complex teams, of course.
concepts
Okay.
for a normal common man to be easily understand and consume it. So there's a lot of work happening on all these lines. I think it'll take time, but just like you guys are doing this, you have your own little audience now that you're influencing. So if everybody can make the little change, but it's hard. It's hard because we're talking about lifestyle changes, which is hard. Even now, sometimes I personally feel like a hypocrite myself, because sometimes it's hard for me. I just lose track of what I'm supposed to practice versus what I'm preaching myself. Right? There are times when I forget to carry my own bag if I'm buying vegetables from the shop, and then I'm like regretting, and I'm talking to myself, saying like, man, what the hell are you doing, JP? Things like that. So, but it doesn't matter. But at least that intention.
Is the
The
effort,
intention
is the
itself is a
effort.
good start for us to go in the direction of leading a sustainable life, cutting down on plastic, because there is enough scientific evidence for all these things in terms of the impact it is creating. There's also there's always alternative theories, right? The internet is all about alternative theories, right? If somebody is for, there's always somebody who's against. There's always somebody who's telling you why everybody is just stupid and they're just fooling you. There's always people doing that, but.
Like for example, you mentioned about the plastics. Like the plastic issue is extremely especially in the water, in the sea
Water
and
pollution,
everything.
yeah.
But will you be surprised to know? I think we were just speaking to it in our previous podcast that a lot of it is not the plastic that actually goes into the fish and everything is not from plastic you throw into the sea. It's from the
It's from the fishing nets.
fishing nets.
It's complicated, lads.
Yeah,
You know why?
yeah.
Because as not just fishing nets, lah. I mean, of course, you see.
But 80%, if I'm not wrong, we did a
80 or
research.
90%
Yeah,
is
yeah.
fishing net.
Probably, lah. But I mean, for example, just come to Pastor's Beach, for example, right? I'm there pretty much every morning. You'll be amazed at the kind of stuff that gets washed up in the shore. I'm usually like one of the first few people to
100%,
get to
yeah.
the shore.
Okay.
Right? It's like crazy stuff just comes up shore sometimes. Everything is plastic. For example, the shampoo you use, all the synthetic shampoos you use in the hair, is all plastic. What are you doing? It's all going through the drain. Where is it going?
Yeah.
It's going to the ground. From the ground, it's going into the groundwater,
Yeah.
and that's the water we all drink.
Even the t-shirts, polyester,
Yeah,
it's a plastic. So even the t-shirts you have is plastic. So then, like the things.
There's no way around it actually.
What do you think would be the solution to? Because the way we are going towards is like another argument can be that, it's very difficult to change the processes that are happening. Like, what are we going to stop consuming polyester? Are we going to stop using shampoos with plastic, as you said? What is the solution?
There
to
are
it?
there are a lot of efforts globally. I think a lot of people are moving in that direction.
How can we influence the corporations to actually, like we mentioned, we talk about fishing nets. A lot of the corporations are still using the same fishing nets, whether it's because of like cost or whatever it is, and they're not stopping. Like they have huge operations.
Yeah, I mean when you say
What
not
can we do to push them? Because just going and stopping, we go to McDonald's, we stop using the plastic straw and everything. Those efforts we do are not going to change things on a global scale. So what else can we do to push these corporations to?
see, as as a common citizen, right? One, the easiest thing we can do is to embrace some of these concepts and see if we can implement them in our lives to start with. And that's one. A lot of these bigger corporations that's actually doing all the stuff, so that involves policy changes, involves involvement of government, people from the government. So it's not something that you and I can actually make a difference overnight. And a lot of work is happening on those directions. If you talk about Singapore alone, there's so much work happening in the space of sustainability right now. The government is being super supportive. There are so many organizations that's working on making Singapore more sustainable. If you see, we're moving in the direction of solar energy. We are trying to see gradually how we can cut down on oil and gas. So I mean, these things cannot happen overnight.
I mean,
It's a long run process, but at least we have a roadmap. What's important is we at least have a clear plan that we're working towards. And I know, at least in Singapore, directionally, there's a lot of work happening for us to move in that direction.
I do see efforts are put in by everyone. Everyone, they do have they put their efforts to save global warming, to save the earth, this and that. To me, it comes back to the same thing where it's the faster way to get things done. Basically, like you want to catch fish, you use nets. So what are the other alternatives to catch fish? Fishing, like go fishing, catch one by one, or you can just use one time. You just grab the whole net.
The operation now is very difficult to some things are very tough to change.
Basically, it's just to get the work done faster.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw that movie, right? The movie that came out, the controversial movie. I forgot the name of the movie. On Netflix.
Seaspiracy.
Yeah, Seaspiracy.
Conspiracy, that's what it is.
That was a good example of. I mean, that film probably gave a lot of people some insights to what's happening globally with all these things.
Yeah, we were just talking about it in the last episode. Yeah.
So that's where I think a lot of policy changes, pushing for policy changes and things like that will make a big impact, because those are not things necessarily you and I can
really do, right?
yeah, really control at our level, right?
Like when we discuss about climate change, it's not that we like, especially me and Lucas in the aspect where we are against some sort of the policies of. I mean, I wouldn't say we are in favor of it, but in a way that is done, like gradually, and it's and that we can see that the efforts, especially, can do not affect us in the sense where we have to completely let go of the life we currently live in. It's something that also, and also we need some. I would say we need some feedback as well. Like if we do this, for example, we let go of or we conduct some of these efforts, what will be the impact in the country or globally? Some information we are not being fed.
I think the problem is, and that's something that I struggle with, right? Like I keep saying, it's all about trying to change the mindset. See, if all of us start waiting for some big change to happen, then there's no solution to it, right? So the question is, me as an individual, what can I do to make a difference? And for topics like global warming and stuff like that, the results are not immediate for you to say, okay, I did this, so you see this came down immediately.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work that way. Right? There has to be a sustained effort to go in that direction.
It's like we can put effort into climate change. We can support. We can stop using straws, this and that. But at the same time, we do have to find other methods. We can preach, but sometimes we tend to not follow at the same time.
Sure.
It's like basically we giving advice to our friends about girls. When you get a breakup, we tell them, this is not the way, this and that. But end up, we fall into the same trap.
And we don't do it.
Exactly.
Like